Hey everyone, welcome to the Ask Nicole weekly live stream where we talk about tech and marketing, mainly as it relates to small business. And today we're talking about my own small business. Now, this is a broadcast, it's moderately personal, which is to say, I'm going to be talking about myself as an example, but I think a lot of people can sort of identify with the struggle I've been having lately. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, when you have a marketing company, there's kind of I feel like there's sort of two approaches to having that marketing company. And for the most part, I feel like I've resolved it within myself what my approach is, but then something comes along. So this is what happened. So this week, I went to a marketing expo, and it was basically a bunch of sort of marketing and marketing related companies. So there was other online marketing companies, there was videographers, there was photographers, there was news stations, radio stations, that kind of thing. So there's sort of anything in the sort of marketing and advertising realm. And then there was people who were looking for our services because were applying for a grant to get funding for at least part of those services. So we went, and in going to that, I had to prepare a couple of things. I had to prepare a slideshow, which is a little bit straightforward, right? Because I do these broadcasts all the time. But the other thing that I spent days agonizing over is it's behind me. Let me show you. So for this expo, we had to come up with sort of some packages and pricing because in part people were coming to understand how the money they could potentially get from this grant could be spent, right? So they're like, put together a little 1-pager, 2-pager, something small that people can grab off your table or, learn more about what you do and sort of what your offers are and at the different price points you work in. So I spent days on this flyer, and here's why. So this first page is very much what an agency might do, right? It's kind of slick and literally faceless, but that's just because of the image I chose. You see, I feel like our logo is pretty slick and all that. And then I had to decide, well, what do I do on the back where I show the packages? And that's where I decided to show some staff members sort of in the content creation process, including myself. I had other options like the drawing on the front page that I could have put as little drawings on this back page. But I had to decide what artwork to put there. Now, you might be watching this and saying, well, like, that's kind of dumb that you had a whole existential crisis about a flyer for one event you had to go to. But there's this fundamental tension, right, between being an agency and being a small business. And let me just like a sort of approach this now. So when we think of agency, we think of like professional, cool. We think of like a very designed kind of, for example, my logo is very agency like. It looks like if you saw this logo, you could think this was a very big company, or you could think this was a very tech heavy company because, the font is really modern. The design is like very specific. I'll show you an example of a website in a second, right? The con of the agency approach, though, is that it's seen as like slick or expensive, right? So if people see something, produced by an agency and they think it's like, a really well produced video or something like that, they're like, oh, like I couldn't ever afford to work with someone like them. Or like, ooh, like they seem like they're a little bit too, I don't know, flashy for me. I just run, a local restaurant and I don't want all that flash. So an example of this, and I just pulled up, by the way, both of these examples are local businesses, but they're just presenting themselves slightly differently. And they might disagree with my characterization, but so this is a local, what I would say is an agency, right? So right away, we're getting to their website and it's just very cool. Hold on, I'm scrolling on the wrong screen. And we're seeing these graphics, we're seeing we're seeing some animations. Oh, it's just like moving me through. Look at that. Just, slick multimedia. Right. If I said this is an ad agency, you'd be like, yes, I agree with you. It looks like an ad agency. So there's that kind of approach when you want to do marketing. And I think it's a valid approach. Now, the other end you can sort of approach as a marketing business is that you're a small business, right? You're a fellow small business owner. And the pro of that, right, is that you're very relatable to people and people feel like, they can approach you, ask you questions, that, you're being straightforward, right? The opposite side of this coin is people will just assume that maybe you're not as sophisticated or you couldn't produce something as slick as maybe an agency would. Now, obviously, that's not necessarily accurate, but it's a perception. So this example I'm going to show you is, I think, an agency that's sort of approaching it like a small business, right? Again, I use the word agency, but you'll see what I mean in a second. So this is a PR firm, but I feel like it's taking more of a small business approach. So first of all, we see photos of what looks like real people. It doesn't look like we're all stock models with like perfect skin and a headset on or something. And the design is pretty straightforward. It's not trying to really do anything except communicate the different ways that they work with people. Um, you know, they're specific about where they work. There's again more faces of real people. They even publish their rates on the footer of their website. So that would be, again, like I said, I'm sure Sutherland Weston would consider themselves an agency. And I'm assuming Trampoline would also consider themselves a small business. So I'm not saying these things can be mutually exclusive. I'm just saying it's an approach, right? And you can see how those approaches are different. So there are certain things in my business life that I've been thinking about and trying to think about how I want to approach them. And sometimes what that means is that I delay approaching them until, I don't know, the day before an event when I need to make a flyer. so so yeah, that's, by the way, I uploaded the picture of me and Jessica at this event. I'll just put it on the screen here. So this was our booth, and I feel way less stupid because right before COVID, I spent like hundreds of dollars on display materials for expos, and then we had COVID, and then I didn't use them, so I got to take them out again, and that made me feel better about spending that money. So you might ask yourself, well, like, okay, I see what you mean by the different approaches. I see how they feel different, but how does this create conflict, right? So there's some fundamental questions I realized in preparing for this broadcast that I have as a business owner and someone who's trying to decide sort of what camp do I fall more in, the agency or the small business camp, right? So first of all, the people I work with. So to me, both an agency and a small business, I'm not a freelancer. It's just, I'm not like that. Those terms don't really apply to me anymore because there's more than one person in this company. I just happen to be the face of the company because A, I own it, and B, I don't mind. So, how do I show that I work with other people without invading their privacy or otherwise making them do things they don't want to do? Like some people don't want to go on video, and I totally respect that. But as a small business slash agency owner, I'm like, okay, how do I want to showcase who I work with without violating any of their personal boundaries, because they're allowed to have them because they're people. Number two, how do I accurately represent my company? So, like, can we make something that looks nice? Absolutely. If we edit a video, will it look like a Hollywood? Will it look like someone in Hollywood produced it? No. So it's this line of saying, like, setting the professional expectation without overpromising. So that's something, again, that I struggle with. And then, in saying who my customer is, am I alienating who my customer could be? Right. So, for example, I have worked with a national nonprofit. I can't tell you who it is because I had to sign a non disclosure agreement. I do have a client that pays a fair bit of a retainer. I have had a client who's paid me, a $9,000 a month retainer before. And, like, if I told you this, you're like, "Oh, well, I thought you were just like a little business." And the thing is, I am. I work with the person who owns the antique store down the street. I work with the person who, runs a food truck or whatever. I work with those people too. So, in talking about my clients, I want people to kind of see themselves in them, but I also want them to understand that, like, listen, we're growing. Now we're 3 full-time people, 2 part-time people, and a pretty good subcontractor. And we're, able to take on more work because the company has grown and changed, especially in the last couple of years. I want to accurately sort of represent that and talk about my customers, but I don't want to necessarily alienate, a large client who maybe doesn't think I can deliver things, or a small business client who thinks that I have some minimum amount to be able to work with them, right? So, how did I resolve my conundrum, or how am I thinking more about how to resolve this better? Well, I would say like two first steps that we took months ago kind of helped me do this, I think, a lot faster than I would have done it otherwise. And the first is figuring out our branding guidelines. So working with Jessica for like 3 months, and just really tooling in the branding guidelines, because now whatever we make, I can make something cohesive. The other thing that we did a while back was we made a carousel, which, in case you don't know, is like a series of images, almost like a little mini slideshow. You typically see them on Instagram, and it's like, people page through them, and making a carousel with some marketing messages, testimonials, and how do you work with us kind of content. So the actual carousel is way too big to be used as a single item anywhere, because I think it's like 20 slides or something. I think Instagram only takes 10, or it takes some amount anyway. So it's impractically too big to put somewhere, but it starts as a set design point and something to start working with that creates a sort of cohesive look. So it has that sort of sophistication, that branding, that like, oh wow, we recognize that an agency would go for, right? And what having that allowed me to sort of start putting that together and having it go with the other marketing materials we have. But what it really came down to with this thing was like, okay, in this flyer, do I use kind of local or sort of personal photography, or do I use designed graphics? I kind of thought I had to pick between one and the other. But Jessica was like, well, why don't you just use both? And I think it kind of worked in this case. Would it work in every case to use both? Probably not. But I think that's the part that was actually hanging me up. And it was making me ask that deeper: am I a small business, or am I a agency, right? As a company. So I decided to take what I like from agencies and to take what I like from small businesses and sort of put them together in my own whatever I have. So the first thing I can take from agencies is the strong branding, right? I want people to see stuff and recognize us. And I think that we're starting to finally get there, between incorporating, logo elements and also having design elements. Like we finally redid all of the cover images for all the social media so that they all kind of match our existing branding. For a while, there was some of them that had the older logo on it, which is similar to this one, but not this one. So that was like something I really want to take from the agencies, is to be able to do that really consistently for ourselves. And by demonstrating we can do it for ourselves, showing people that we could do it for them too. The other thing I wanted to take from agencies was attention to detail. And I've been getting really, I think, a lot better about doing this, noticing when things are different, noticing when fonts are different. Like, oh, this is a 40-point font and this is a 35-point font. I can now kind of visually see that a lot easier than I could before, because I've been training my eyes to be looking for those things, because it's those little things that make a big difference and can make something that's not sloppy, that can make something that looks really good. And I want to make sure that whatever we put out, in particular for our clients, looks really good. And so being able to do it for ourselves and working on marketing materials in that way has really, I think, honed my editing skills there. And then the other thing I want to take from agencies is a sort of boutique approach to marketing. So this idea that someone comes in and not everybody fits neatly into a package, right? We created these packages for a specific group of people in a specific place at a specific time period, but that doesn't mean that everybody fits those. What we want to do is be able to offer solutions that work well for people at a price point, and that they can afford, and generating results that they want, right? So those are the kind of things I want to take from an agency approach to a marketing company. But I also want to take some things from the small business approach. I really think that like I want to make sure that we're approachable. So when I do these live streams, granted I am not a Instagram model or anything like that, but I do look put together, but I also, look like a real person. I talk like a real person, and we talk about things hopefully on these videos and other things that we put online, things that are important to the businesses that we work with. So I hope that whoever follows our channels feels like they're learning more about marketing and feels like they can make better marketing decisions with their business because of the content we produce and the information we're putting out. The other thing I want to take from a small business approach is being transparent. So, who works here? What do we do? What do we not do? Who do we like working with? These are all things that I want to be really evident when you visit our website or other places we might be online. Is you can look at us and you can say either I like them or I don't like them because I know who they are. And it's okay. We're not everyone's cup of tea or shot of whiskey or however you want to put it, right? And then the other thing I want to take sort of from small businesses is aligning myself with other small businesses. So, working with other small businesses when I can, referring great people that I work with or have worked with, just that sort of approach that I think is a little bit more friendly than the agency approach that I've seen. Like, oh, we do everything in house, everything is insular. We don't really talk to other people in the industry. I don't want to do that. I want to be working with fellow small business owners because like I feel like the core of my identity is a small business owner, not a slick agency necessarily. And another thing that I also want to take from the small business world is communicating about pricing. I don't know about you, but when I walk in a store and if I see products and there's no price on them, I just assume I can't afford them. And so on our website, we don't necessarily go into all of our pricing, but we talk about, why websites start at $3,000, why, what our marketing packages start at, what that includes. And, I don't have it like broken down in every possible iteration, but I want people to sort of generally know what our price points are so they can decide if, we might be a good fit or not. And if we're not a good fit based on price, that's totally okay. So yeah. And then obviously I want to identify with being a small business and like, we're not going to make everyone do like a cheer at the end of the day. We're not going to make anyone go on video if they don't want to. I just really want to respect people's like sort of personal boundaries and that working here might be part of their identity, but it is not their entire identity. And sometimes I see these agencies that really, I don't know, especially put these young people in these positions where they're working all the time or they're sort of front and center for the company and they feel a kind of pressure. And I don't want to do that to people. I don't want to do that to people regardless of their age, but I really hate seeing it when big advertising agencies do that to young people. I'm not going to say any names, but might rhyme with Harry G in his company. So anyway, I guess I've decided that my company, Break Even Communications, is both an agency and a small business, and that's okay. I don't have to pick, but I do have to understand what parts I'm taking from where so that I can accurately communicate them. And then I'll want to do things like finally redesign the website after 5 years, because every time I open that thing, I think, we've changed so much and I want to change this site, but I have to be really clear about what my identity is first. And it's a lot easier to help other people with their identity than it is to look at your own, right? At least it is for me. So anyway, this little flyer was a very useful exercise for me to do because it forced me to have this conversation with Jessica / my therapist. Just kidding. Jessica's my coworker and not my therapist, but we work on design stuff together. So sometimes she ends up pulling things out of me I didn't even know was back there. So I guess if you're watching this and maybe there's something similar in your industry that you can take the parts of it like that you want, are you an e-commerce site or are you a brick and mortar store? Maybe you're a little bit of both, but maybe you want to take certain things from certain aspects of each of those identities and present them to the world. I think as long as you're communicating it, I think it's good. So that's all I got for today. thank you for giving me for free therapy. I'm just kidding. Basically, and then I can even take this closing slide we did for the by the way, little pro tip. In QuickTime Video, you can loop a video. You just go to view and you click loop and it will loop a video. So we had a video looping at this expo and this was the last slide. And it's, really actually a good summary slide for any of our stuff, that you can follow us on social media. We do free consultations. We have a Calendly link for that. It's linked on our website. Or you can just email us and we can talk about your marketing or anything else you might need. Happy to point you in a direction, even if it's something that we don't do. So yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you next week with some other topic having to do with tech and marketing. And if you have something you want me to address, I'm happy to take suggestions. You can leave it as a comment wherever you're watching this video, or you can go to the contact form of our website. That goes to me, and I'll be able to see it. Topics, questions you have, I can make you anonymous, whatever you want. And yeah, have a great one and see you next time. Take care.